Thanks everyone for coming to this presentation called A Rewind on Imagining Future Cities Through Drama and Design. Back in 2017, 16 9 to 10-year-olds participated in a drama project through their school with a visiting performance artist called Andy Field. This was presented during the Auckland Fringe Festival that year. It was called Lookout and was unique in being a one-on-one conversation between each child, standing in a high city vantage point with an adult stranger, sharing their perspectives of the city, past, present, and future. The performance embodied feelings, memories, disappointments, and hopes of the intergenerational pairs of participants. It was also coloured by the events of the time. For example, this was a time of widespread media reports about the Auckland housing crisis, with spiralling prices and plummeting availability, a bit like now. And you can see in the top left, one of the children's drawings highlights this, saying not so expensive. Down below it, you can see what the performance actually looked like with the participants. Of interest within this paper is how such valuable information gathered from children can be used productively within a design process in order to create public space and landscapes that are engaging and enduring for children. Further, how can the process ensure design robustness in the face of worldwide health and safety emergencies, as has occurred in 2020 as a result of the global COVID-19 pandemic? One thing that is proposed is that central to this is application of use affordance in endeavouring to create places that meet the needs of children in a flexible and continuous way. And this is some of the literature that I have drawn on in writing this paper, and I'll just briefly touch on some points. The Child Friendly Cities Initiative has been going for about a decade, and it promotes cities ensuring that young people feel welcome and involved rather than marginalised and frustrated. As Craftel says, it is important to think beyond play, for example, playgrounds, since playgrounds can stereotype activity and are often burdened with tension over what ages are catered for. And he suggests that designing places that foster intergenerational connections could result in vibrant, playful, multifunctional urban spaces. Just touching on the affordance theory, since this is central to the paper, Heft looked at children's environments and proposed that affordability refers to the multiplicity of uses for any single thing within an environment, with the intent being to design for flexible use. The more prescriptive a play environment is, the less affordance it has. And under this definition, strongly nature-based environments will have greater affordance, since there's the possibility of multiple ways of use and engagement. And that links in well to the point above, which is the role of nature in children's lives. This exposure is increasingly regarded as essential for well-being, with the length of time exposed to nature being less important than how it is spent. Dropping down to performance art, this type of theatre is known as process or pedagogical theatre, which was what was done with the children and what Andy Field took the children through. It's defined as involving trained performers working with non-trained participants to partially or completely develop a piece to perform. And Andy Field had a particular way of approaching things, and what he was really trying to do was to give the children the tools to interact with adults on their level, which in turn led to them feeling a lot more confident. And this method of performance art, and particularly this pedagogical theatre, is really key in that it involves deep involvement and understanding of the issues being addressed, so it's an immersive experience. And it also offers a shield, which is created by the mask of the character being played, which helps people to overcome sort of any inhibitions. Finally, the COVID effect. No doubt that children's physical and mental well-being has suffered, denied contact with friends, access to playscapes, reduced medical and educational services, and feeling increased anxiety over safety and the future. Moving on to the results, 16 children from this inner city Auckland primary school took part in the project. 12 girls and 4 boys, aged 8 to 10 years. 2 focus groups of 8 children each ran for about 45 minutes, and these asked children to talk about the experience of the project and how they wanted to change Auckland. Interviews were also held with 4 parents, the lead teacher, and Andy Field. Then in 2018, a Masters of Landscape Architecture student re-looked at the data in a research by design process in order to answer the question, how can an alternative participatory process apply to the design of green spaces for children as Auckland densifies? So most of the ideas came from the children during the focus groups, which is indicated in Table 1. From the adults, the main theme that came through was from the interviews was one of nostalgia for buildings that have now gone. And as I said, that there was the themes are indicated there, 6 themes that came from the data, and the examples next to it of what the children suggested. Some really great ideas there. The purpose of this paper is to critique this design that came from this data in terms or in light of the 2020 pandemic. So onto the design. The site chosen by the student to create her design, which was based on her interpretation of the data, was a neglected reserve in the Auckland central suburb of Roskill South. The area is currently undergoing large-scale redevelopment by Kāinga Ora, or ex-Housing New Zealand, to replace 1940 to 1960 housing stock with new densified social housing dwellings on a much smaller land garden footprint. The students' design concentrated on providing more activities for children and a place for community gatherings and growing food. Referring to that previous Table 1, only 2 of the 6 themes which came out of the data are strongly represented in this resulting design. These are the more fun play and more inclusive themes. They are demonstrated in the design through the tandem slides that is in the top left-hand corner picture, the tandem tracks for wheels, which is to the right of that, and the viewing periscope, which is to the left, which enables viewers to have a sort of fun view of Mount Roskill or Puke Te Papa. These can be considered to be the play elements, while the community hub, which is a repurposed ex-state house seen in the bottom left picture, and garden and orchard are the inclusive element. This house also counts as historic because it feeds into that nostalgic focus of the interviewed parents. Unfortunately, none of these elements would be usable during a pandemic such as 2020 has seen, except perhaps harvesting fruit in the orchard. Looking at the site plan to the right, only the picnic and chill out zone, indicated by the number 10, would be usable, and even this would have elements that would be deemed unsafe. Moving on to the discussion, the negative aspects of COVID-19 were that in this new world, playground and other public amenities closed during lockdowns, with people forming lines outside shops with wide spaces in between. See on the bottom right. As a result, mistrust and frustration built up. You can see the child walking away from the playground with her parents and all the signs on it saying you cannot play here. However, there was an upside to COVID as well. So what were children and their families doing during these lockdowns? They discovered watching sunrises, exploring waterways, climbing trees, walking dogs, and biking, just to name a few. So a lot more sort of activity and nature-based experiences happened. I believe this highlights that while playground design appears to be the go-to response in order to create child-friendly and family-friendly environments, they are vulnerable to closure during times of health alert. Also, as Craftel points out, engagement of the whole family would be more fulfilling, since many playground pieces are one use only, which according to Heft equates to low affordance. So what kind of design may have been more resilient for the site under consideration? Most of the activities I've shown were strongly nature-based. Recent stream restoration and daylighting projects in Auckland, such as La Rosa in Green Bay and Te Aonga or Oakley Creek in the Underwood and Wallasey reserves, might have large budgets, but the gains are many-fold, and they're shown in the pictures in front of you. They create green and grey infrastructure and enduring outdoor environments for play, learning and exercise. Within this space is the Marahupara traditional Māori playground, made entirely of natural materials, and that's in the top right and bottom left, with great flexibility and therefore high affordance. This playground was not closed during COVID-19 lockdown, since there was nothing to close. It is fully integrated within its environment. So, in conclusion, it's not to say that what the Master Student design was wrong, but it could have focused on greater affordance, which would have made it more resilient in the face of a pandemic. And I think that there is definite recommendation that we rethink provision of outdoor facilities for recreation. Some of the playgrounds and spaces I've shown, such as Marahupara and the restoration of Te Aonga, are successfully leading the way in this regard and should be seen as models for future water-sensitive urban planning. And this could be further developed with more community involvement through, say, gardening and local waterways stewardship, which would be even richer, and also could perhaps incorporate some of the focus group children's more inventive ideas for their city, like rubbish management, colour and shapes. Providing amenities children can reach safely and that have high affordance and green credentials are more likely, in conclusion, to be pandemic proof as well as restorative. And this is an area of great scope and importance as we move within a world more fragile than ever. And yet this could give great strength of ideas and engagement. And there's some shots of those parks. Thank you very much.